This is Brian Jackson reporting for Infowars.com. This is my entry to the Paul Revere contest. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to outline for you a nefarious agenda that has been perpetuated for years, dating back into very ancient history and coming very close to fruition. This agenda is not an American agenda, but one of its primary goals is the very death of American freedom and liberties. This revolution will not be televised, it will not be seen on TV, but it will be heard right now today. The Federal Reserve is a private entity. In fact, it is not federal at all. It is no more federal than Federal Express. What does that mean to us, and what does that mean to our liberties? Well, let's hear what Meyer Amschauer Bauer Rothschild had to say. Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. Few people realize that the current Federal Reserve System that we have in power today is actually the third attempt by an international banking cartel to get central private banking so that they could coin money out of nothing. In fact, the second Bank of the United States was ardently fought and eventually beaten by President Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, who strongly opposed the Federal Reserve, had this to say: if Congress has the right under the Constitution to issue money, it was given to them to use, not to be delegated to individuals or corporations. Andrew Jackson then went on to say, the bank is trying to kill me, but I shall kill it. In fact, Jackson was able to kill the second Bank of the United States, and its charter was not renewed and expired in 1836. But the bankers struck again. On November 22nd, 1910, representatives from the German Warburg family and the London Rothschilds met in secret on an island, on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. There they discussed how to get the adoption of a private centralized bank, financed and funded by them. It was agreed on November 22nd, 1910, that the third private bank would be called the Federal Reserve to give it the illusion of government control. The Federal Reserve Act was passed on December 23rd, 1913, passed through Congress, at a time when, being December 23rd, most of the Congress had in fact left, going home for the Christmas holiday. This is something that, if you look into slippery legislation being passed, seems to happen all the time. Again, the Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's a private for-profit corporation, no more federal than Federal Express. Senator Barry Goldwater wrote in his book, With No Apologies, does it seem strange to you that these men just happen to be in the Council of Foreign Relations and just happen to be on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve that absolutely control the money and interest rates of this great country? A privately owned organization, the Federal Reserve, which has absolutely nothing to do with America, end quote. The Council on Foreign Relations is the promotion arm of the ruling elite. Belonging to the Council on Foreign Relations is many influential politicians, academics, and media personalities. Funded in 1921 by both the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundation, it is a spin-off group of a British think tank, the Royal Institute of Internal Affairs, which was founded in 1919. Again, the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR, being funded in 1921. The CFR is an invitation-only group. Some of its prominent members are Hillary Clinton, Tim Geithner, George Soros, Dick Cheney, and Michael Bloomberg, just to name a few. David Rockefeller also founded another group, this one in 1973, calling it the Trilateral Commission. It was the brainchild of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wrote about it in his book, Between Two Ages. Its main purpose is to engineer an enduring partnership between the ruling elites of North America, Western Europe, and Japan. David Rockefeller, speaking to the Trilateral Commission in 1991, said this: "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected the promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries." End quote. David Rockefeller speaking in front of the Trilateral Commission that he funded. Very few people have ever heard of this group. Very little. It's very seldom talked about. It's the ultra-secret Bilderberg Group. This group is attended by elites, royalty from around the world. It was funded in 1956 by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. It was named after the Bilderberg Hotel in the Netherlands, where they had their first of what will now be many meetings. Again, annually, and the location changes every year. Former President Gerald Ford said this in 1965 in reference to the Bilderberg Group, this ultra-secret group: "You don't really belong to the organization. One gets an invitation from the prince." Why are presidents, politicians, media personalities belonging to a secret group and being invited by royalty? Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who literally wrote the book on propaganda, called Propaganda, had this to say: "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of." Bernays knew if you framed an idea as ridiculous, people will feel a sense of shame for believing it. This immediately triggers a primitive herd mentality of fight or flight response. You either fight the idea or you run from it. Conversely, he understood when you repeat an opinion enough times, the public will begin to see it as truth and will accept it, because, again, if others accept it, it must be true. Immortal Technique said universal truth is not measured by mass appeal. Some of Edward Bernays' famous clients included the American Tobacco Company and the infamous United Fruit Company. Bernays also popularized the fluoridation of water. Again, a nephew of Sigmund Freud, he understood that people followed the pack mentality. So for the fluoridation, to get Americans to accept fluoridation, he came up with the marketing strategy: 9 out of 10 dentists approve fluoride in the water. You can use this strategy with almost everything. Interesting enough, Bernays was a PR, public relations advisor for Alcoa, the aluminum company of America. Fluoride is a byproduct of the manufacture of aluminum. Studies have shown not only does it cause massive health defects, brain damage, bone damage, but it also has a side effect of making people docile and malleable. Well, they're fluoridating our water. When Ben H. Bandikian first published his book, The Media Monopoly, in 1983, approximately 50 companies controlled the majority of the media in the United States. By his 6th edition of his fantastic book, The Media Monopoly, in the year 2000, the total number of media companies controlling the bulk of the media that Americans see, read, and hear had dropped from 50 to 6. The big 6 companies who control the majority of the media here in America are Time Warner, Disney, Viacom, Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, CBS, and NBC. When you control what Americans see, hear, and read. It's pretty easy to control what Americans think and believe. The first casualty of war is truth, said Rudyard Kipling. War is a Racket, a fantastic book by the U.S. General Smedley P. Butler. Hitler is another person who knew the bigger the lie, the easier the sell. In 1933, Hitler's men burned down their own government building, the Reichstag. This was then blamed on communists and was used to pass massive violations of the German people's civil liberties, bolstering up government, and obviously influencing the worst police state arguably known to man. The German Enabling Act, in fact, has some very striking similarities to the American Patriot Act. If you don't know, if you haven't looked into 9/11, I would just beg all the readers to watch Building 7. Nothing hit Building 7. It was the third building to collapse on that fateful day. There are a ton of firsts in 9/11. Nothing hit Building 7. It collapsed at free fall speed at 5:30 p.m. Larry Silverstein actually went on record saying, "We gave the order to pull it." Another interesting tie-in relating to 9/11 is the Project for a New American Century, which was founded in 1997, published a document entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses. This document was published in September of 2000. And I quote from this document, "Further, the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor." This document, written by Paul Wolfowitz and other neocons, and sponsored by a group that was founded by Cheney, Rumsfeld, and other famous neocons, is directly calling for, before 9/11, a new Pearl Harbor style event. Again, I'm not going to get into 9/11 more than to say there are a ton of firsts there. 9/11 was emphatically an inside job. To give you one last example of false flag in the United States, that's actually at least admitted to be an event that never happened. The event that got us into the war in Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. On August 4th, 1964, the U.S. destroyer Maddox was allegedly attacked by North Vietnamese patrol boats and torpedoed. Lyndon Johnson's Secretary of Defense at the time, Robert McNamara, has since admitted in a 2003 documentary entitled The Fog of War that the Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. You can YouTube it. Again, check out the clip. It's all over. There is the Secretary of Defense admitting that the Gulf of Tonkin never happened. Also, Infowars.com published a fantastic article written and published at Infowars.com on July 15, 2010, written by Steve Watson. It's entitled "Declassified Vietnam-Era Transcripts Show Senators Knew the Gulf of Tonkin was a staged false flag event." How many Americans, Vietnamese, and innocent pedestrians lost their life over an event that at the very least never happened, and very possibly would have been, in my estimation, a example of problem, reaction, solution, where they create the problem, they use the media to hype your reaction, again, threat level red, threat level midnight, whatever you want to do, and they get the solution that they wanted all along. Problem, reaction, solution is a phrase coined by a great researcher, David Icke. Check him out. It gets even more sinister. Eugenics. A lot of people have never heard of eugenics, so I'm going to give you the American Heritage Dictionary definition of the term eugenics. Eugenics, the study of hereditary improvement of the human race by controlled selective breeding. Eugenics was developed and practiced by Sir Francis Galton. Sir Francis Galton, the founder of eugenics, was also a cousin of the famed evolutionist Charles Darwin. In fact, they so much believed in their idea of that you could breed a super race or a master race. Sounds very familiar when you look at the Third Reich, but they so believed in their science of eugenics that the Galtons and the Darwins and a number of other families actually interbred. Again, verifiable, please look it up. But what people don't realize is that the practice, the science of eugenics, again, the study of improving a race through selective breeding, was widely practiced in the United States. I have studied with great interest the laws of several American states concerning the prevention of reproduction by people whose progeny would in all probability be of no value or be injurious to the racial stock. Adolf Hitler praising American eugenicists. Hitler even wrote a fan letter to the American eugenics leader Madison Grant, calling Madison Grant's race-based book The Passing of the Great Race. Again, the title of Madison Grant's book is The Passing of the Great Race. Hitler called this book by an American eugenicist his Bible. Here's one more quote for you. Birth control must ultimately lead to a cleaner race. That is, in fact, the founder of Planned Parenthood, one Margaret Sanger. Here's another one. No woman should have the legal right to bear a child without a permit for parenthood. Again, the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. Here's another more nefarious and more recent quote from the aforementioned think tank Project for a New American Century. We know how much they love us. The quote is, "And advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biowarfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool." Project for a New American Century. Very scary stuff when you put this all together and you begin to think of the applications. One other tie into this entire thing. This is a very old agenda. It's a very old agenda, and again, we covered eugenics and all these other things, but there's also an occult aspect here. And I'm just going to give you just to show you kind of how old, and it goes much deeper and much older. It's a very old philosophy. But Albert Pike, the very famous Freemason, wrote in his book Morals and Dogma in 1871, "Masonry, like all the religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism, alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages or elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled, to conceal the truth which it calls light from them and to draw them away from it." Again, that's Albert Pike in 1871, writing in Morals and Dogma. One more from a very famous occultist, very praised in the music industry. Jimmy Page actually was a huge... When you go into the music industry, you start seeing these occult, ancient mystery folks popping up again and again, and I would suggest that there is a tie in here, but I'll go to the quote. "The serpent Satan is not the enemy of man. Be he who made gods of our race. He bade know thyself and taught initiation." Now I'm going to get right into it here, into the occult and how it ties in with our elite. Founded in 1832 at Yale University, Skull and Bones is a famous fraternity with some very famous members. In the election between George Bush and John Kerry, not only are they distant cousins, but both were Bonesmen. What is Skull and Bones? A secret a secret fraternity founded in 1832. It's the offshoot of an older German lodge, and Skull and Bones is also known as Lodge 322. Their meeting house, they call it the Tomb. Not only was George W. a member of Skull and Bones, but also Prescott Bush, who was George W. Bush's grandfather. Few people realize that Prescott Bush was actually indicted under the Trading with the Enemy Act in 1942. His son, Herbert Walker Bush, the first President Bush, was a Bonesman and also conveniently a director of the CIA. Other famous Bonesmen, Averell Harriman, And honestly, the Skull and Bones is a direct recruiting office for the Central Intelligence Agency, and we know how much they love us. One other thing that folks don't know about, or society that folks don't know about, is Bohemian Grove. Here's Elizabeth Flock writing for the Washington Post, June 15, 2011. Every July, some of the richest and most powerful men in the world gather at a 2,700-acre campground in Monterey, California, for 2 weeks of heavy drinking, super secret talk, and druid worship and other rituals. End quote. Bohemian Grove was founded and formed in 1872. Another interesting feature of this famous grove/retreat of the elite's playground is a 40-foot owl. In 2000, Alex Jones actually snuck into Bohemian Grove and was able to film during their 2-week festivities. Alex Jones was able to film one of the such ancient druidic symbols that elites like the Rockefellers, the Bushes, was able to film one of the druidic rituals. This ritual is called the cremation of care. The cremation of care, which I'll show here in a moment, shows an effigy of a small person, a child, being cremated, and then it's entitled the cremation of care. It's being cremated in front of a giant 40-foot owl. So ask yourself, are these leaders who pronounce Christianity or whatever, what is it that's even ethical of going to a theatrical event that shows cremating an effigy in front of a 40-foot owl? To really show you guys where we're all going and to grasp what the elite are trying to build for us, all you really need to do, if you want to see the projected blueprint, the projected society, the dystopic future that they're building, a dystopia is simply the inversion of utopia. Whereas utopia would be a fantastic society, a dystopia is a miserable police state society. But to see where we're going, you need to read only 2 books. And I think where they're taking us is a fusion of these 2 books. That is George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Brave New World, written in 1931, is a society that is divided into a caste system. There's the alphas, there's the betas, and it goes all the way down to a slave caste system. Now, in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, people are no longer birthed naturally. In fact, everybody is genetically engineered. They're created. The alphas are created to have higher intelligence, be more attractive, and then it goes on down the line to where you have a literal slave class that's deliberately dumbed down. Not only are they divided into classes, but any emotion, any thought is medicated by a drug called soma. So that's one version of this dystopic future, and I think if you would read that book, you're going to see a lot of this agenda which is projected moving forward. Also, Aldous Huxley was not just some unconnected writer. Aldous Huxley's father, Thomas Henry Huxley, was a biologist who worked closely with Charles Darwin. Aldous Huxley's brother, Sir Julian Huxley, was a famous eugenicist. And just one quote from this famous eugenicist, author of Brave New World, Aldous Huxley's brother, Sir Julian Huxley, is this: political unification in some sort of world government will be required, even though any radical eugenics policy will be for many years politically and psychologically impossible. End quote, Sir Julius Huxley. The second and the final projection is George Orwell's 1984, written in 1948. George Orwell's 1984 shows a world divided into 3 superpowers. These 3 superpowers are perpetually warring with each other, not so that any one side will win, but to keep their individual populations in a state of fear, of perpetual attack. But the main superpower, as it pertains to the book, is Oceania. This superpower consists of an inner party, which is 1% of the population, an outer party, which is 14%, and the proles, or your subjected slave class, which makes up 85% of the population. Again, dumbed down and what have you. Children are taught by the state to spy on their parents. People are employed by the government to literally revise history on a daily basis. Cameras are everywhere. Thought is a crime. In fact, it's called thought crime, and thought crime is punished in George Orwell's 1984 by severe brainwashing or even death. Aldous Huxley and George Orwell were contemporaries, and in fact, Huxley wrote Orwell a letter, and just a brief quote from it. He says, "My own opinion is," and this is Aldous Huxley to George Orwell, my own belief is that the ruling oligarchy will find less arduous and wasteful ways of governing and satisfying its lust for power. And these ways will resemble those I describe in Brave New World. Huxley in a letter to George Orwell. Society is governed by a group of people whose best interest is at keeping you, the general population, the general man and woman out there, keeping you dumbed down, keeping you distracted. As Caesar said, give them bread and circus. Going back to Plato's, Plato's Republic and a society of philosopher kings that should, for the good of the people, dictate to the masses, and the masses should only know what the government tells them, because that way they're more subservient. They don't ask questions, because after all, it's in our best interest. So I think if you really get out there and you start looking at some of these things, the Federal Reserve being a private entity, a private for-profit corporation that was founded by a group, a cabal of international criminals. And when you also realize that this international cabal, these interrelated criminals are also funding things like eugenics, which is the study of not just breeding better people through selective breeding, which ties into the royal family, who has been inbreeding to keep their blue blood, which is where this comes from, to keep their blue blood alive for centuries. Not just does their eugenics tie into that, but they also, the hellish realization of eugenics is as shown in Nazi Germany, when people who were deemed inferior by these philosopher kings, these elite who deem not to tell us the truth, are systematically, scientifically destroyed. And again, history is written by the winners. Well, these royal families are definitely winning, because here we sit in front of our TV and we're watching, the entertainment is given to us. Few of us have ever heard of Edward Bernays, who wrote the book on propaganda and knew how to use psychology to titillate our basest animal instincts and to guide society as a herd, as you would guide cattle through a maze to where the elite wanted us to go. So, but unfortunately, these elite do not have our best interest at heart. Presidents, be it the Republicans, the Democrats. I heard a great interview, Professor Griff, on Alex Jones the other day. He said, few people realize, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, few people realize we're getting caught up in the left-right paradigm, the politics, the fake wrestling match. They don't realize that the Democrats, the Republicans, there's two wings of the same damn bird. And he called it the Republicrat. And I love that. But we don't see it. What we're watching on TV, it is made for our mass consumption. They call it programming for a reason. And we are being programmed. And I think if folks would pull themselves away from the television and they would start looking, just look into one thing. Look into false flag terror. Look into 9/11. Just look. Watch those towers fall at free fall speed. Look, and when you start looking at these things, you start seeing the same names popping up, the same organizations popping up, and it's right there in front of you. The revolution may not be televised, as Gil Scott-Heron so famously said, but I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, you are the revolution. So wake up, do some research, Most importantly, don't ever take someone's word for anything. Turn off the TV, pick up a book, and just follow your passions.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Sound familiar? That's our Second Amendment. I'm Anthony Nicoletti, Paul Revere contestant at Infowars.com. As you may know, our Second Amendment is under attack. Recent tragedies have gun control pushed on the American people and in our judicial and court systems today as we speak. This is a powerful situation we're under. You have to realize if we don't use our First Amendment to stand up for ourselves, we're going to lose our second. Here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson, founding father. The strongest reason for people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. Tyranny? Well, that's an absolute power, especially when exercised unjustly or cruelly. Let me tell you a little bit about gun control history. This isn't the first time it happened. History repeats itself. You gotta realize Hitler did it, took the guns, 13 million dead. Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, tens of millions dead. Pol Pot, Cambodia, more than 1 million dead. Obama took the guns, 100 million dead. Americans, is that what we need? No, we don't need this at all, guys. This is not a laughing matter. This is our Second Amendment. If we don't keep these guns, if we don't keep them to protect our children and our families from violence, from crime, or from tyranny, from government, from people coming to your door, spying on you, and doing things that you have the right to do. So, that's that. Little known fact, this is a term that was coined by R.J. Rummel. It's called democide. Democide is the murder of any person or persons by government. The number one leading non-natural cause of death, democide. That's genocide, that's wars all rolled into one. That's the government destroying us. That's their plan, that's what they want. They want a small herd of people that they can control. You know, we should have the control, not the federal government. The federal government should be limited. How should they be limited? By our firearms. Another good quote by Thomas Jefferson, founding father. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fear the people, there's your liberty. So, again, we need to be in control. We are in control. We just have to tell them that we're in control. How do we do that? We speak up, we stand up. We don't let them knock on our doors and take our guns. We don't let them buy 1.6 billion bullets. And if you want to talk about the leading U.S. killers today in American history, here's a little fact. It's heart disease. 598,000 people die annually from heart disease. 500,000 die from cancer. You know how many die from crimes of violence with weapons like firearms? 9,000. That's less than 25 a day. But Obama's really mad about the 20 that died at Sandy Hook, isn't he? George Washington once said, "A free people ought to be armed." Well, ain't that the truth? That's how you stay free, okay? If they take your weapons, what are you gonna do to defend yourselves? What are you gonna do when you're running your clerk in your store and a gunman comes in and wants everything you have? You gonna give it to him? Well, you can if you want. I don't. I don't want to wait 10 minutes for the police to come and decide who to shoot, me or him. I mean, this is a matter of life or death. I'm choosing life. Plain and simple. So, this isn't the first time in U.S. gun control has happened. There's been many laws that have been passed to prohibit us from trading guns, from selling guns, purchasing ammunition from certain creeds or colors to use weapons to protect themselves when we're all equal. So, it's coming back again. You're going to see it right now. The first and foremost was in the late 1800s, the Jim Crow laws. Those were segregation laws, mostly used in the South, and this happened to keep, newly freed slaves. It kept them from owning and protecting their families. So there you go, now you're free, but who's got the weapons? How free are you? No, that's a police state. You're not free until you can protect yourself. In 1934, the National Firearm Act, that taxed the sale of, automatic weapons. Next, the Gun Control Act, that was in response to the JFK assassination in 1968. It was illegal to mail long guns felons, drug users, and mentally ill people were prohibited to own firearms. So again, they may deem you mentally ill because you were jaywalking. Who knows the story behind it, but now that you're mentally ill, no gun for you. How many can we take from them? Because there's more of us than them. So the more they take from us, the less we are protected. In 2007, they made a push to where everybody had to be background checked via the NICS system, where every state had to background check people and send this information so they could collect our data and then use it against us at the time of purchasing a weapon. So again, no more secrets hiding from Big Brother. They can see, they can hear. They're watching me right now, and they're watching you too. So might as well tell them how we feel, right? That's right, Infowars.com, everybody. James Madison once said, "Disarm the people. That is the best and most effective way to enslave them." Benjamin Franklin, "Those who give up their essential liberty to obtain temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety." So if you want to be a cattle and herded to the side, that's fine. I want to think for myself. And I know when there's a ruse going on and I can see it, they say, "Hey, I'm going to raise the left hand and hit you with the right." You know, that's as simple as they do it. They create a problem and then they create the solution. That's pretty simple. And that's what they're doing today. And that's how we got to the Patriot Act. In response to 9/11, now Big Brother can search your house without a warrant. They have the right to spy on you, wiretap. They have the ability to look into your medical records, your tax returns, all against the Constitution that were written by our forefathers for our protections. They're now trumped with new laws. Why? Because we were in a panic. And they created a hustle and bustle, swept it under the rug, and next thing you know, there's new laws that are infringing upon your rights. There's new government branches and new arms of the government that are making sure that their Patriot Act stays intact. One is the Homeland Security, also created in 2002, directly after the 9/11 attacks. Homeland Security is the 5th branch of the military, which is now being used against the people, as you'll see. Under this Homeland Security, they're purchasing 1.6 billion bullets. They're refitting 2,700 armored vehicles for U.S. usage. They're not in Iraq anymore. Those vehicles are here because the war is here, and the war will be here because they're prepping for it. FEMA, also created in 2003, another response to the 9/11 attacks. Look into those because, we probably attacked ourselves, just saying. So after these attacks, here comes FEMA. FEMA is supposed to be the Federal Emergency Management Agency to come to the aid of natural disasters or problems that, the United States have. Well, they don't do a good job of that at all. As you've seen in New Orleans after Katrina, have you seen time and time again in New Jersey this year, in New York, when powers are out for a week and FEMA has a sign on the door that says, "Sorry, we're closed." Doesn't make a lot of sense at all. But what they do is they actually have these big fields and these big places that can hold thousands of people for sustained long periods of time. Sounds more like a labor camp to me, especially when you've got the barbed wire on top of the fence and you're on the inside looking out. I don't really want to be there. Here's a quote from our President Obama, and he says, "We cannot continue to rely on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security just as powerful and as strong, just as well funded." So what he's saying is, we have our military, we have our Navy, we have our Army, but we need these at home, and that's why he coined the phrase Homeland Security, to make us feel more secure, when really, those are the ones that are policing us today. James Madison had a great quote: "If tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy." As you can see, that foreign enemy was Afghanistan. All the new acts have been passed. All the new branches of government have been made. The tyranny is here. Again, just wait for another one. Why wait? Why don't we stand up and stop one? So this is our time to stop this from happening. We need to stand up. We need to right to our elected officials. We need to bullhorn. We need to stand outside of Washington, D.C., which is pretty much illegal to do now. We need to stand up and we need to take control of what's rightfully ours, and that's this land. In accordance to that, the Connecticut gun laws that have recently passed due to the Sandy Hook incident, which Obama has catered to and been there time and time again, telling these people it's okay, you deserve a change, America deserves a change. They've passed new laws forbidding the sale of high-end magazines, background checks to purchase ammunitions, magazines, or guns, all of them. So you can't even buy a gun without a background check. Now they have a dangerous weapon offender registry. So if I've ever shot somebody, now I've got to tell you about it. Even if it's, free and clear in the court system, everyone has to know. I'm not a sex offender, I'm just trying to protect myself and my family. But now I'm a pervert too, okay? I'm okay with that, I guess, if you are. A lot of theatrical events have been happening recently. You may have heard of the Batman shooting with assault rifles. You may have heard of the Sandy Hook, where the children sadly were, attacked or assaulted with rifles as well. But what you don't hear about is things like the real Crocodile Dundee in Australia. And what happened to him, Australia has a gun ban on any unregistered weapons. They're allowed to, just like the Patriot Act, walk into your house, check for unregistered weapons, and take them. This guy said no. What happened? A standoff. And now a hero and a legend of his own country was shot and murdered in his front yard after defending himself. So they are out to take the weapons. The UN has already stated they're out to take the weapons. They've already disarmed Britain. They've disarmed Australia. They're disarming everybody in China. And now it's our turn. What are we going to do about it? So I just want you guys really to take a look, do some research, and we're never going to find out why it's happening, but we can find out what is going to happen by taking a look at history in itself, knowing that every time they go to ban guns, genocide happens. It's going to happen right here. We have the ability to stop that by standing up today. And I'm really excited. This is my first video I've ever done. If you can tell, I'm a little shaken up. I am. Part of it's from being behind the camera. Part of it's because I'm really mad that this is happening to such a once powerful and great prominent place. But you have to take a close look and realize, at the times we thought we were good under Bill Clinton or before that, maybe we weren't. Maybe we were just told that we were. Maybe they control the regulation of money. They control the food supply. They control everything around you. So when you're doing good, it may be because they said so. And when you're doing bad, it's absolutely because of them. So, in conclusion, do some research. Thank you, Alex Jones and the staff at InfoWars. Look forward to working with you soon.